Matthew Rathbun, and I teach a lot of classes on technology and risk, and I'm mashing those two things up on this one topic. I've been getting a tremendous number of questions over the past 3-4 years about surveillance in a home. With the emergence of smart home devices, Nest Cams and other types of devices where I can watch you as you're looking at my home as a buyer, or I can listen in on the conversation, it has given the rise to a number of concerns, both for the homeowner and for the agent practitioner. And so let me, as quickly as possible, break down some of this. First, this is nothing new. We've had nanny cams and baby monitors in homes forever, for decades now. And this has always been a concern. We should have always told our clients to act accordingly when in the house, because they don't know when they're being recorded by video or audio, or being watched by the seller who really is just eager to know. But you know, we've watched as HGTV has grown over time, and if you watch some of those episodes, they have this black and white hidden camera from people who have probably signed a release in order to be on that camera in the first place, that are spying in so that the seller can now get feedback from the buyer directly. And that puts that notion in their mind. And then they go out and they find these now affordable and high definition and easy to use cameras like the Nest Cam and others, and they place them all over their home. And then it creates a little bit of an issue for you and I. Now, first, also make clear that I am not an attorney. So what I am sharing with you in this video is regurgitated from those who are attorneys, from those we've heard across the country who have expertise in this area, who have shared this information, and we're repackaging it for you as agents. And so make sure you do check with your state and local counsel, association counsel, or your own attorneys if you do have any questions about this. So here's our broad understanding. That generally speaking, from a federal level, wiretapping is illegal, as one would hope. And wiretapping is typically listening in on another or recording another person's conversation which you're not a party to. So that's a federal level, and it is a crime to wiretap and listen in on someone. And the second level is your state law. And states have generally one of two options for this. And the one is either a two-party consent rule or a single-party consent rule. And here's what that means. If you and I are having a conversation right now, and we're sitting in my office here, and it's about anything you want it to be. It could be about an employee issue, an agent issue, a transaction issue. And we find out that someone else has put a wire or a bug in our office and are listening in, they're probably in violation of the law, because they're not permitted to listen into that conversation or record that conversation without authorization. That would be an obvious violation. Two-party consent would say you and I have to agree. So if I sit down with you and go, hey, I really want to record this conversation for my own review later, or because I think we've got a conflict that I'd rather have on tape, and you say okay, and I say okay, and I hit the button, then that's two-party consent. We both agree. Single-party consent would be you and I sitting down and me slipping my hand into my pocket, hitting the record button on an app on my iPhone, recording without your knowledge the conversation, and you would be surprised how a large number of states have only a single party law that I could record that conversation. It's the same thing with phone calls. You call into somewhere and they say, okay, hey, your call's being recorded for training purposes or such, and you know it's being recorded for risk management issues. But nonetheless, they are putting you on notice because they may be doing business out of the state, and the other state you're in may require a two-party consent. So I'm from Virginia, and Virginia only has a one-party consent. How this connects to our security camera is that even if you have a single-party state or single-party consent state, recording you, if I have a Nest Cam and I'm watching on my phone from some other location and listening to the buyer agent and the buyer speak, is probably unlawful in every state. Matter of fact, I have not heard an exception to that yet. Recording you on video, however, tends to be okay. We haven't yet found any, and it may be out there, so check your own state, but we have yet to find any state or commonwealth in which they've said, no, recording inside your home and the video is improper. Now, what you do with it later may be at risk, but actually watching buyers and buyers agents wander throughout your home on the camera is probably okay, but listening in is not. Now, I've got a catalog of stories, and when I do teach this class in a broader setting, we talk about the instances where homeowners have been, before the smart home devices, homeowners would take baby monitors and put the transmitter in the living room and then have the receiver at their neighbor's house or in their car around the corner trying to listen in, understanding the distance may be a problem, but they tried it nonetheless. Or having nanny cams or other cameras in the house to see the behavior of the buyer, to see if there's interest or what they need to do a bit differently. So this isn't really new, other than the fact that it's far more ubiquitous now. So here's a couple things. One, you as buyer agents should talk to your buyers and say, act accordingly. Assume you're being recorded, don't do anything silly, and reserve your conversations for me once we've left the house. Not even on the front porch, because if they have cameras inside, they very likely have a Ring doorbell or some other type of listening and viewing device outside. For sellers, there's a broader conversation, and this should be part of every single listing appointment now. Dear seller, do you have any listening devices in your home? Do you have any cameras that are anywhere and any audio devices anywhere? And if you do, we think you should talk to an attorney if you're going to keep them in place, because there are probably some unlawful acts associated with you listening in the conversations. And dear seller, I know maybe you're not listening, you're just watching on video, but no one's going to believe that if you had the capability of both watching and listening that you were only watching. So we think you should probably seek some legal counsel. And if you don't want to do that, that's okay. Here's the better plan. Allow us, your listing agent, to place in the MLS and the agent-to-agent comments a statement that says, home has internal and external surveillance, both audio and video. Buyer should act accordingly. And then additionally, on my team, we go ahead and my teammate and I go ahead and put up little placards or little signs outside of the door. And it says, smile, you're on camera, you're probably being recorded, act accordingly. And oh, by the way, with a full price offer, some of these devices may convey. Again, for the buyers, it's real simple. Buyers act accordingly, assume you're being recorded. It's a good practice. Sellers, we should disclose by MLS and by placards on the doors, putting the buyer on notice that they are in fact being recorded, so that when they walk in the house, it is with the consent of being recorded. Otherwise, they can just not walk in the house. So this requires a little bit of extra work, but really not as much. I mean, this video is a couple minutes long, but the conversation with your seller is very simple. Are you recording? And if you are, let's let everybody know so that it doesn't harm your negotiations later. Because a buyer who finds out later that they were recorded or halfway through the house looks up and says, oh my gosh, there's cameras all over the place, are gonna feel violated, they're gonna feel damaged at some level, and there's gonna be a break of trust. And trust is something that's a critical element to our negotiations later. So that is the what if the seller's recording part, right? The buyer and seller recording. The less popular and maybe slightly more irritable conversation is whether or not buyers can record by video or audio or both when they're in a house. Check with your local association council, your state association council. But by and large, the feedback we've gotten in every state I've been to, and I've talked to lots of people, lots of attorneys, lots of articles have been written about this, it is unlikely that the buyers have consent or permission to FaceTime, live stream, take photos, or video inside of a seller's home. Remember that the pictures that the seller or the video or the 3D tour or the virtual reality tour that the seller has allowed the agent to post was with seller's explicit consent. Ideally, they would have seen those pieces of media and then said, okay, seller, you can put them out, or listing agent, you can put them out there. For a buyer, they were given a limited license. They were given the license to enter into the property with the intent of viewing it, to see if they would desire to purchase it. They were not invited in to document and record the property. Now, how do you do that if you wish? What if you have clients who are at a distance and the spouse, the husband wants to live stream it to the wife who is on whatever, at work or wherever? Get consent from the seller. That's the easiest part. Text the listing agent. Hey, by the way, my buyers need to take some video and photos of the house today to share with the other purchaser. She can't be there. Just letting you know, I hope it's okay. If the listing agent or the seller declines, then you know, but at least you have let them know your intent, and if they don't stop you, or if you ask nicely and they say sure, then you're clear, you don't have any problems. But you should ask, and always ask. Don't assume and say, oh, it's vacant, I don't worry about it. Seller still has rights even if they don't have furniture in the house. So get consent as a buyer agent. And I know the pushback I've gotten teaching this all over the country has been agents going, well, we've never had to do that before. Well, again, it's never been quite as ubiquitous as it is now, and technology will always outpace the practice. So if we are practicing in a certain way, there's not been regulation yet developed to limit or to expand on what we're permitted to do. It is better to be conservative. It is better to ask or put notice to the seller that you're intending to do this and see what they say. So that hopefully is answering a few questions that you may have. This is, again, a big part, actually this is a small portion of a larger part of a conversation that we have in our smart home training classes. And as a matter of fact, the CRS and RRC CRS's program on smart home certification has a very extensive area of conversation and dialogue regarding security and devices and how do they work and what are their other obligations and some samples of how we get disclosures put out and such. So if you do ever have the occasion, go to the RRC webpage, look it up, find the smart home certification. I'd be happy to chat with you in class. It's a really popular program, as you can imagine, and it answers a lot of questions that people didn't even know to ask yet about all these security devices. So hopefully this answers some questions for you, got some good information in your hands, and if you need anything else, please visit my webpage. My website is theagenttrainer.com, and I'll be happy to get you some more information and answer any questions. Thanks so much, and I'll see you around.